All right, let's talk about something that's super important but can feel, well, really awkward. How to interrupt someone politely. It is such a delicate dance, right? And today we're going to break down the steps so you can absolutely master it.
I mean, you've totally been there, right? You're in a meeting, maybe just chatting with a friend, and you have something really important to add, but you just stop. You're held back by that little voice in your head worrying about seeming rude or disrespectful. So how do you get your point across without just shutting the other person down?
So what's the big deal here? Well, it's this fundamental conflict. Interrupting is often completely necessary. At work, it can get a project back on course. In a personal chat, it can show you're actually engaged. But it feels so risky because it cuts against this deep-seated social rule to, let people finish what they're saying.
And, this whole thing gets even trickier depending on where you are in the world. For instance, in places like Britain, communication tends to be a lot more indirect. So a blunt interruption can feel really harsh. That makes having a polite game plan even more critical.
Okay, so what are the stakes? What happens if we mess this up? Well, the consequences are pretty real. It's not just a little bit of awkwardness in the moment. A bad interruption can seriously damage relationships and leave people feeling totally ignored.
I mean, really think about it. When you cut someone off, especially when they're in the middle of sharing something vulnerable, it can honestly feel like a physical blow. It's jarring, and it sends a really loud message. What I have to say is more important than what you're saying.
And this isn't just theory. Listen to this story from a guy named Rob. He was trying to tell his friend that another friend of theirs had passed away. And in that incredibly vulnerable moment, she interrupted him with something totally trivial. Can you imagine? The feeling of being cut off like that at that exact time, it was just deeply, deeply hurtful.
So the bottom line here is the feeling it leaves behind. When you're interrupted badly, it can make you feel drained, devalued. It just throws the whole conversation off the rails. And it can even make you start questioning your relationship with that person.
Okay, so we get it. It's a minefield. But what do we do about it? Well, the good news is there's actually a practical framework you can use to jump in respectfully. See, it's not about avoiding interruptions altogether. It's about learning how to do them the right way. Boom, here it is. A simple 5-step formula. First, pick your moment. Wait for a natural pause. It shows you're actually listening. Second, apologize and acknowledge. A simple, "so sorry to interrupt," goes a long way. Third, get to your point quickly. Be concise to minimize the disruption. Fourth, and this one is huge, hold their thought. Say something like, "Hold that thought," or "You were just saying." It proves you value what they were saying. And finally, number 5, realign the conversation. Hand it right back to them.
All right, quick vocabulary lesson because it'll help. When we say to jump in, that's just the general act of entering a conversation. But to cut someone off, that's more specific, and usually it's negative. It means stopping them mid-sentence. Our goal is to jump in without cutting them off.
Okay, if you take one phrase away from all of this, make it this one. Hold that thought. It is so powerful because it's so respectful. It basically says, what you're saying is important. I definitely want to hear the rest, but I just need to say this one quick thing. It validates them while still letting you speak. It's a total game changer.
This next one, it's a tiny change in wording, but wow, does it make a huge difference. When you use the word but, it basically cancels out everything that came before it. Think about it. I hear you, but sounds like you're about to tell them they're wrong. But when you use and, I hear you, and I was thinking, it builds on their idea. It's collaborative instead of combative.
So, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the workplace. Obviously, the stakes can feel a lot higher at work, right? Careers, big projects, they're all on the line. But the fundamental rules for being polite when you interrupt, they are exactly the same.
And I know what you're probably thinking. Is it really okay to cut in during a super formal meeting or a big presentation? And the answer is yes, absolutely. But, and it's a big but, only when it's truly necessary.
Here's the thing, you have to remember, in a business setting, a good interruption actually helps the whole group. It moves the conversation forward, it corrects really important misinformation, or it saves a ton of valuable time. I mean, if your colleague is basing their entire point on last year's numbers, it is your responsibility to politely jump in. Now, for a masterclass in what not to do, check this out. This is a real story about a guy in a meeting who, when a coworker brought up a valid concern about financial risk, just turned around, wrote this on the board, and shut down the whole conversation. That's not just rude, it's incredibly unprofessional.
So how can you do that? How do you correct a coworker without starting a workplace war? Well, here's the playbook.
First, acknowledge their point. Then, frame your correction gently, like, oh, you might not have seen the latest figures on this. Then provide the new info. And this is the most important part. Protect their reputation. Make them look good. This builds trust and makes the entire team strong.
All right, as we start to land the plane here, let's zoom out. Every single time we communicate, including how we interrupt, we're making a choice. We're either building a connection with someone or we're putting up a wall.
You know, here's a really simple way to picture it. An interruption is like tapping someone on the shoulder. If you do it once, gently, and for a good reason, totally fine. But if you keep doing it over and over, it just gets annoying, fast. It all comes down to frequency and necessity.
So I'll leave you with this one question. The next time you feel that urge to jump into a conversation, just take a half second and ask yourself, am I about to build a bridge here or am I about to build a wall? Because ultimately that choice is always yours to make.